Welcome to the Cookbook, where we invite guests on to share the ingredients of what has helped make them the successes that they are. All of it, the good, the not so good. You're not going to find anything half-baked here. And our kitchen gets messy sometimes. That's when the fun starts. So come on and join us. Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Cookbook. I'm your host, Iris Goldfeder, and I'm super excited about my guest today, Rebecca Arnold. She wrote this really cool book, The Rooted Renegade. I just love the title, but there's so much goodness in that book, and I'm going to let her tell you the full title. But before we get started, click like, share, subscribe, do all the things, get the word out, appreciate you all. All right, we're going to get started. So, hey, Rebecca.
Hi, it's so good to be with you today, Iris.
You as well. I know we had a little bit of a glitch. So, we record and she popped in and Kofi and I were talking and she thought that we were recording another podcast. So she popped out and we were like, where'd she go? So
just me playing peekaboo.
I mean, we were trying to record somebody earlier and her, like, it was just one of those, like, her connection just didn't work. So we, there's always like technical stuff or, people popping in and leaving. It's, it's part of the fun. So, we were just talking about, I guess the disconnection now, but I don't want to like hop right into that, but, and I try to keep this non-political, and then people who are listening right now who know me are going, yeah, right. However, I think that there is so much going on a daily basis, and it's not even executive orders anymore. Now it's just change is happening.
Yeah.
And it's happening rather quickly. And it's not good. There's like, things that are happening that are not good, that are scary. As the host of this show, I know that like I have everybody listening. I have, everybody on, we'll just say, all different sides of the aisles. And I'm going to really stress that I hate that we're on sides. I just want to, like, we shouldn't be on sides. We should just be people. We're Americans. And this side bullshit is all political. If we really just talk to each other, I think we could, fix this. But
I'm with you.
That's my thing for the day.
Yeah.
But your book is just, I saw like a little bit of it because I get so many books and I don't get a chance to read everything the way that I want to. But I think that, what we talked about was people finding themselves right now. A conversation that I had with Vicky, who you and Vicky would like love each other, was instead of expecting the other shoe to drop, right? I do an exercise every morning and at night I say, I believe something wonderful is going to happen to me tomorrow. I say it 3 times. When I wake up, I say, I believe something wonderful is going to happen to me today. So that I'm looking for the good stuff. So when something good happens, it's like, oh, was that the good thing? Oh, something else good happened. So if something bad happens, right, it makes it a little more consumable and more palatable. So, what do you think? I don't know. It's like, how are you navigating this?
Yeah, I love that example that you give of a practice because I think lots of folks are kind of at their edge right now in terms of finding the practices that are going to support them in this moment. So I'm in the middle of a big life transition, dropping my eldest at college next week. And so right now I am thinking about how I'm grounding myself, how I'm keeping kind of all of it together at the same time, right? My joy and enthusiasm for them, my shifting role as a mom as they transition to college, the logistics. And I feel like on a micro level, what I'm managing with my family is what lots of us are managing on a macro level in terms of all of the pieces we're trying to hold and the paradoxes we're trying to hold simultaneously. So for me, it's a question of grounding back into like, what's the big picture of what I'm up to? Who do I want to be right now? And where are there opportunities to like take the tiniest steps toward that? Because sometimes we just get lost in trying to be way too ambitious given the context of the moment we're operating within right now. And some of those micro moves actually then generate tremendous momentum for ourselves. So that's a piece of what I'm seeing kind of personally, and also for my clients who are in leadership positions within nonprofits, within government, within the education sector. I mean, the clients that I see are really on the front lines of a lot of this academics who are grappling with funding shifts. And so I see a lot of this as like really boiled down to, what do you have control over today? How do you want to show up for yourself and with your people? And then how do you generate day to day what the experience you want to create together? And kind of shut out the noise. Like I've been talking a lot with my clients about what's the noise and what's the actual content of where you want to dig in. Not to kind of lessen the severity of some of the things that we're grappling with, but if we're in the severity of things constantly, we will find ourselves unable to metabolize any of it and really kind of break down and burn out.
Yeah.
And I'm not interested in any of that for any of us. And one of to your point about kind of like, I think there's a simultaneous connection within to kind of like the deepest parts of ourselves right now, and also connection without. And so one of the things when I'm feeling that exterior disconnection that I like to think about is, if you've ever been on an escalator when someone has tripped and you see everybody lunges toward the person who is off balance.
Right.
And that's who we are at our essence as humans, right? That's not a political conversation. That's not a divide. Mm-hmm. That is instinctually who we are. And so I like to come back and remind myself of that again and again when I'm feeling really deflated about the current context.
Well, and whenever there's been a massive, like 9/11, there were no Republicans, there were no Democrats, there were no independents. Everybody wanted to help. It didn't matter, right? And I'm sad that the only time that we do come together is when there's a disaster. And it's like, is it going to, and although there's a disaster now, and that doesn't, that's not happening because we're being divided. But I think that, if we can all remember that feeling of, oh my God, my fellow person is hurting. How can I help? What can I do? I was a supervisor in a company up in Chicago when the planes hit, and I had to keep everybody calm, but then like the camaraderie of the communities was unbelievable. Like I remember I drove home and I was at a light and I looked over and I saw this older woman. She was like crying. And I rolled down my window and I was like, "Hey, are you okay to drive? Do you need to pull over?" And she pulled over. And I just sat with her for a few minutes. I was like, "Are you okay?" And she was like, "Yeah." And then, she left, and I didn't live too far from where I worked at the time. I remember getting out of my car and walking up, because I was in a 2-story walk up, and I was walking up and my neighbor on the landing just came out, and we looked at each other and just hugged each other and cried. Mm-hmm. And this was like a 65-year-old black guy, and it didn't matter, mm-hmm. And I mean, that doesn't matter to me anyway, but the fact that, it was like he needed a hug or I needed a hug, or at that time we mm-hmm. both needed a hug. It just, and it was a beautiful thing. And, after that, I would check on him. Hey, how you doing? He would like bang, because we literally lived on top of each other. He'd bang on the ceiling every once in a while. Mm-hmm. He wanted me to come down. So mm-hmm. It was just really interesting. And I look at the parallel of where we are today, not the parallel, but just the difference of where we are today. And it's just like, oh my God. It's sad, and leaders have to deal with their teams at this point, especially in the not-for-profit. Oh my God, like the not-for-profit, people are losing funding left and right.
Yeah. I mean, that's what's so challenging is there's like this gestalt context, and then there's the individual challenge context that people are operating within. So sometimes the work that I'm doing with leaders is both how to kind of settle themselves and create spaciousness within themselves so that they can be present for their teams and kind of hold their larger vision in mind while all this is happening. And also to normalize what's happening for their team because they forget, right? So I think about this. I think part of the reason this moment is landing so tenderly for folks is that it's layered on top of all these other experiences, right? So I don't think we have yet come to terms with the scale of suffering that COVID brought globally. Like we know that intellectually, but I don't think our systems have metabolized that. So there's kind of that layer that people are operating on top of. There's AI. What does AI mean for my future, for my position, for my company, right? And then there's some of the basic tenets of how assumptions that we made about funding that will be there, about social norms, about all of this, how we are together that has shifted. And then we're talking about kind of deliverables on our team. And people are not kind of showing up in the way that we expect. No surprise, right? And so if we pretend all of that is not at play, we miss an opportunity to A, like build deeper connections among our teams, and B, actually be able to have the impact that we want to have. So there are some adjustments we just have to make around the expectations that we're carrying in this moment and kind of being real about what we're all kind of confronting.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because I think that, leaders, everybody, people think that, it's easy, that they're just the boss, they're their boss and they're going to handle everything and make everything okay. But the leader is not okay, especially in the not-for-profit sector where they're seeing all of their funding go and they have to, they feel that they have to put on a strong front. But I think that if they don't and they show the human side, I think that's even better because then their team is like, oh, it's not just me. Right.
Yeah.
Like even he or she is feeling this, and then kind of build like a stronger team and a deeper camaraderie, I think, between everybody because of that. The COVID thing. I mean, I personally have a condition that I'll have forever because of COVID. And it's not long-term COVID, I don't think. It's just a symptom that, I have to get checked every year. And, at first I was angry about it because I've always been the healthiest person like in the world. Like I never was in the hospital. I was never whatever. And then I was like hospitalized for 4 days, which, I was like, get me the hell out of here, whatever. I mean, I thought I was in like a suite because it was like, I had a bed with a 50-inch TV and a little thing over here. And then my wife had a little area with a little ensuite, with a little bathroom there. The menu said room service. And I was like, ooh, what did I do
What's happening?
Yeah, and they were like, well, we want you on this floor. We'd like to be able to check you. And I'm like, okay, like not knowing that I was basically in PCU, which is one level below ICU. And then when they told me that, like the day before I left, I was like, oh, good. I was high at that point for like 3 days because they were pumping whatever. And I was like, oh, okay. Okay. It didn't hit me till I got home. And I was like, oh. And then a year later, it was like, I almost died. Huh. Okay. Like, so for me personally, it was it was, a little life-changing, but not until after the fact because I didn't know.
Yeah.
For a lot of other people, it made a lot of people angry. In the sense that, they didn't want to wear a mask. Sorry, you have to wear a mask. You have to keep your fellow person safe. They didn't and then there were the people that were angry. The people that were angry that they were wearing, masks.
Yeah.
It was like this
Yeah.
all, and I just remember, like, I walked into a Walgreens and had two people follow me because I was wearing a mask. And I had my AirPods in. You're welcome, Apple. Feel free to, be a sponsor. But I had my AirPods in, and I called my wife, and I was like these two chicks are following me. I think it's, and she's like, "Don't end up in jail." I was like, I'm not, but like, I really hope they, And so finally, it was like a mother and daughter. And I'm like, "Can I help you? Like, why are you following me?" And they were like, "You should take your goddamn mask off." And I was like, "Oh, you need to get away from me. Like you need to get away from me." And then the daughter said something, and I said, "You know what? I just got over COVID. I have no problem pulling the mask off and coughing if you'd like." And then they left. So the store manager kind of looked at me and chuckled. But I was just like, it's not okay. And I lied. I mean, I didn't, but at that point it was like, I did not know if they were going to physically confront me at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like the trauma that people have experienced and their feeling of a lack of autonomy for their own choices has then given permission at that moment, gave people the sense of permission to kind of infringe on other people's autonomy. So yeah, I think we're all just sitting with a lot of that. I mean, from that to my daughter the other day said, we did a lot of things when I was younger. She's 16 now. When I was younger, and I feel like we haven't done that much in the years that I remember better. And I'm like, COVID, And she said, "Oh, that's true. I guess like there were a few years in there where we couldn't do much." But she's, in her concept of the world and who we are as a family and what we do together, that is just one piece of the impact from that to people who've lost loved ones. I mean, I don't think we can, and the sort of bedrock, the kind of sense of shaking up the bedrock of security that a lot of us feel in terms of health, I think has ripple impacts for a long time to come. So that's just, and when we think about I was really struck, I went to the UK recently, and even there were signs about kindness and being kind to each other and all of that. And I said, we've gotten to the point as humans where we have to remind each other about some of these fundamentals. And so when you think about interactions at the grocery store to around a conference table at work, to, I work with a lot of physicians and superintendents who lead school systems, and they're saying things like, we still have not recovered from the pandemic. I mean, physicians are still pushing themselves and never really had a break from the incredible financial or emotional and physical toll of the pandemic, to school systems still grappling with some of the fallout from learning and how school systems had to completely change everything they were doing, to students at different ages having different impacts based on kind of how old they were when the pandemic hit. So there are all these institutional sort of impacts that we're seeing while the rest of life is continuing to go on, and we're now confronting new questions around AI, and then, some existential questions for organizations like academic institutions, wondering where government funding is going and happening, to people, I've had clients who run huge labs at institutions saying, I don't know that I'm going to have any staff if visa changes happen. So people are really wrestling with a lot of reality at the moment and needing a lot of tools to kind of settle themselves. And that's a piece of why I wrote this book, was like really giving people a huge buffet of options to draw from. Because I see leaders all the time who are at the top of their fields, very well trained, but have some gaps around emotional aware, like naming emotions, and how do you allow emotions to move through you, to like, what am I even here for? Right? Like, I've been on a track for a long time, and is this even what I want? To, I don't know how to form boundaries in my relationships. Right? And all of those things have ripple impacts at our workplaces if our leaders are grappling with these things. So I think about some of the leadership shifts that need to happen, really happen from the inside out. So if we make a small shift in coaching around from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset, for example, that's going to have huge impacts on how a leader talks about everything from compensation and promotion to how do we look at the potential for our work, to how am I showing up in this meeting, right? And so I really wanted something a resource that people could pull from the shelf at kind of any phase they're at and have a coach on their bookshelf, essentially, to walk them through a lot of this.
Wow. And, I sit here and there are like some kids weren't even alive when 9/11 happened, which I forgot who I was talking to the other day.
Mine were not born when 9/11 happened.
And it was like, 9/11, like we were talking about 9/11 and they were like, that was like, wasn't that like a really long time ago? And I'm like, yeah, it was like 20. I was like, oh, that was like something like 20.
It's a quarter of a century
years ago. I know, right? And I was like, what's that? And then realizing that, it was like, wow, so it's like, with me, I was born in, I'm old. I was born in 1960. So it was like, the Korean War and, World War II, like that kind of, almost like that same kind of, history thing. And it was like, okay, that's kind of messed up, because when I think of all the wars that I've lived through, right. And, and where we are now. And, but I think that, there's a positive that can come out of all of this too. And it's that when we can, like my thing in the morning, it's like, I believe something wonderful is going to happen to me today. Because if we can shift our mindset away from the gloom and doom, because to me, it feels like there's so much gloom and doom around everything. And, let's face it, it's a shitty situation. I mean, where from our point of view and other people that I know, there's a lot of not good stuff going on. From other people's point of view, it's exactly what they wanted, which is also frightening that people would want this. And I also have to say, okay, there's a certain fear mongering that we can either choose to, go down the rabbit hole, and or, we can say, okay, how do we make this little corner of the world better? Because we can't, we can't change what's happening on our own right now, whatever. But we can help people in our area. There are things that we can do so that it doesn't feel, helpless, because I know a lot of people right now feel helpless.
Yeah.
Which is scary.
Yeah. And that's the game of destruction, right? Is to engender helplessness. And so if we focus on what we can control, and our brains like to tell us that if we keep on top of things and know what's happening, we're safer. It's not actually true, right? Unless we're in the path of a hurricane or something like that, and we need to know the hurricane path, right? Of course we need that kind of knowledge, but we don't need to know every single horrible thing that's happening in order to feel safe.
Right.
So even though we think we do, right? And that's what feeds the doom scrolling and all of that. If instead we have more of a limited frame on, education is something that's really important to me. I'm going to continue to follow what's happening in education. And I'm going to trust that other people are following other aspects of what's happening in the political domain. And I'm going to only consume information to the extent that I'm going to do something about it. So that could look like, I'm figuring out where I want to contribute funding, or how I want to reach out to people, or what kind of posts I want to make to raise awareness. If I'm just passively consuming information with a false belief that it's keeping me and my people safer, it's not. It's just like sucking the life force from us. So, and it's really, it's challenging, right? So it's like, how do you catch yourself when you're in that kind of a loop, so that you're conserving your resources for the things that really matter to you, so you can actually move things, whether that is, cleaning up your street, looking after your neighbor, or marching and taking some political action, whatever it is, right? You have to conserve your energy for those things that are actually going to feel good to you and move things in the direction that matter to you.
Right. Oh, 100%. So what did you do before this?
Before chaos of the political context, or before the book, or before it started coaching?
Before the book, like your career, like what was your career?
Okay, gotcha. We all have so many befores.
That's so funny. I wasn't even thinking of that, but yeah, no, but what got you to where you are now? How's that?
Yeah. So I am a lawyer by training and went into law to work on education equity issues. That has been always a passion of mine from high school. I read Savage Inequalities, which is this incredible book still from Peter Kozel about the differences in school systems from suburban areas and rural areas. And that really propelled my interest in education. So I ended up studying law and working at the U.S. Department of Ed in programs and policy and that sort of thing. And then had my kids, did some consulting from home, and then landed my dream job, which was working on social emotional education policy. Because I felt like this was the missing piece for a lot of students and adults, is that schools or we don't have other kinds of systems that would teach these kinds of skills. Like we rely on families, right? But we don't have religious institutions aren't as prominent, community institutions aren't as prominent that focuses on this. And schools are a huge leverage point to focus on these kinds of bedrock skills that people need. So I was doing this policy job, loved it, and burnt myself out horribly. And it was a combination really for me of some workplace challenges, trying to do it all with my young kids and this job that I loved. And a lot of folks I work with are kind of in that space of being so mission driven and forgetting themselves in the process of it. So when I burnt out from my dream job, I was like, well, now I have this huge existential void. Like, what am I going to do? Like, what is here for me now that is no longer an option? And I did a lot of reflection, and I came to coaching from a place of, it's interesting because when I was in college, I majored in psychology thinking I would be a therapist. And I worked at a psychiatric institution with adolescents. And I was like, I'm way too sensitive for this. Like I'm an empath. It was a lot.
And
coaching felt like, yes.
Yeah.
Coaching felt like I can work with attorneys. I can work with social impact folks. I've been in the nonprofit sector for a while. I can work with government. I can do all of these different things to be the coach that I really needed when I was trying to figure all this stuff out and have the impact I wanted to have. So now I work with these super high performers, like Harvard physicists, social impact leaders, superintendents of large school systems, to forge the legacy they know they're wanting to generate for themselves and feel good while doing it and not burn themselves out. Because I mean, the amount of respect I have for my clients is huge. And I'm like, I want you to feel deeply supported so you can do your good work in the world, right? And so I just love my work. I love my clients. I feel like the work we do together has such ripple impacts for themselves and their families and their relationships to their organizations. Like I had a client's husband come up to me, like randomly, like I ran into him at a meeting and he was like, I can't thank you enough about the impact you've had for our family. And that's something like I don't even see, right? Like the client might share something like that, but to hear that from a partner about how some of the work has shifted their dynamics at home and how good the person felt kind of internally and then externally, and then to the systems they were impacting. So it's really, when I say change from the inside out, it really is, sometimes it can sound really amorphous. But when I see these impacts, like I worked with a physician who was on the brink of burnout, who was an OBGYN, who was doing incredible work and not showing up in the way that she wanted to with her patients because of some systemic factors, right? And working with her to like really claim her place and ask for what she needed. And then to go from that and on the brink of burnout to be like a reproductive justice advocate within her system was like at a moment when Roe versus Wade had been threatened and all. It was like amazing to see the transformation. So I see what's possible every day for folks. And one of the ways that I think about this book, The Rooted Renegade, is that it's really human curriculum, right? It's what I wish everybody had access to along the way. And it harkens back to my social emotional learning skill kind of foundation too in education, that so many of these skills, like if I imagine rolling back the clock for my clients, if they were 21 years old and knew how to do some of this stuff, the change in trajectory they would have had from feeling like they have to beat themselves up all the time to achieve at high levels, from that to, I can be my own biggest ally and cheerleader and still perform at high levels. I mean, imagine the lack of suffering that would be created from that,
And it's funny because they're like, entrepreneurs, like we joke and we're like, if you ever really want to get to know yourself, become an entrepreneur. I mean, 100%, right? Because I had a session with one of my strategists today, and it was about leadership. And we started going over like all of these things. And I was like, well, shit, and, not that I wasn't doing things, but I was doing things a little bit differently than I could have been. And I was probably taking that to the extreme, like putting off a little bit more of what I should be doing onto somebody else. And I shouldn't have been doing it. And so for me, that was like a, wake up call. And then I was like, okay. So the leadership part is a little bit different than, and 10 years in, it's different than what I imagined it to be. So that was a hell of a wake up call. But, just in general, like there are people that are, listening to this or thinking about becoming an entrepreneur. From your point of view, from your perspective, like what kind of advice would you give somebody who's thinking about doing that?
Yeah. So I think of myself as an accidental entrepreneur. You'd asked me 15 years ago if I'm entrepreneurial. I'm like, hell no. Yeah. No, absolutely not. And now I'm like, oh, actually, I kind of like being my own boss. Like my boss is a little tricky sometimes, but we figured out our working relationship, right? As you say, you confront a lot of aspects of yourselves that you can otherwise hide behind blame it on other people, right? So like if you're in a team context in a workplace and you're not performing at the level you want or showing up how you want, you can blame it on other people, right? You can say like, well, this colleague is kind of a jerk, or like my boss doesn't know what they're doing, or the plan doesn't make any sense. When it's just you, it's a mirror, right? You're confronted with how you're actually showing up, where you're falling short, where you might be self-sabotaging and all of that. And so the other piece of this is being your own engine, right? So in a workplace, you have a boss, you have a strategic plan, you have a vision, you have performance reviews, you have all of those other structures to kind of keep yourself on track. When you're an entrepreneur, you own all of those things, right? And so being really connected to why you do the work and who you want to be in the work is crucial. And surrounding yourself with people who invite you to ask those questions of yourself is also important. Because as you say, you can get off track. And of course, that happens, right? So you can get back on it. But sometimes you need people to reflect to you, oh, here's what I'm noticing in your business. Is that your intention? Is that how you're wanting to show up, right? And I see there's so much noise in the entrepreneurial space, I think, about like profit and scale and, cookie cutters and blueprints and doing things, blah, 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 blah. And I think a lot about how I want to feel when I'm at work, the work that I have generated for myself, and what are the values I really want to live. Right. So I'm not distracted by the noise of all of that stuff. And I'm always struck when clients will say to me, like, I just so appreciate that you show up how you are on any given day. Like some days I have like a bun in my hair is a disaster. Some days I'm like very put together. Some days I have glasses, some days I don't. And when my clients is like, I so love the permission to just kind of like show up how I am. I don't feel like people can say like, be authentic, right? What does that actually mean? And so some of the
talk on that, on authenticity.
Yeah. Yeah. And it has a big impact. Humans are very good detectors for authenticity. We might not be able to put our finger on what the thing is that's bugging us or why we don't want to work with somebody or we're not interested in buying something or whatever. Mm-hmm. But this question around authenticity, I think, is at the heart of a lot of that. And it takes being like in integrity with yourself in order to create that, right?
Right.
And so I think that's a huge part of entrepreneurship. And for me, like a lot of this is stylistic, right? So I have ADHD. I can't I don't cookie cutter anything because I get bored with my own stuff, and that's fine, right? For some other people, they might run their businesses differently, but it's taken me a couple of years. I've been in business for maybe 8 years, I think, but it's taken me a little bit of time to just like really claim how I do things, what works for me, like unapologetically,
Right.
and know that the people who are for that will find me, and the people who aren't, that's totally fine. Like there's no judgment about that. But if my business is not working for me, it's not going to work for anybody else either. And so I think really being straight with yourself about that is an important part of the entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah. No, and I agree with that. And the authenticity piece, for me came from doing a lot of inner work, because I had, every people who watch us know this, but I had a coach tell me like 8-9 years ago, be less you. You're a New Yorker in Indiana and you're working with introverts and you're trying to get business. You need to pull back a little. And I was like, what the hell does that even mean? But, okay. So I did. And it was like a mask, right? And I started attracting people. But they were the wrong people.
Yeah.
And the thing that killed me was these people knew me for like 10, 12 years. The first time I said, fuck, they were like, ah. And I'm like, really? So I ended up, losing people, and I fired the coach because he clearly, gave me bad advice. But it was like, okay, I want to attract the right people and I want to be authentic. So if I want to be authentic, who am I really? I had a good idea of who I was, but I really needed to do the work. And COVID, let me tell you what, I ended up reaching out to my therapist from 20 years ago to figure out why it was freaking me out. And it was freaking me out because I couldn't control what other people were doing. I had no control. Yeah. And when I, my therapist, Angie, I don't know if I can give her a plug, but anyway, her name was Angie. When I went to her the first time, she used to piss me off because she'd be like, so what are you going to do about that? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm paying you. What the hell am I going to do about that? She's like, you have the answer, right? So, so that time around, the second time around, we figured out what it was. And then I was like, oh, and then I started mindfulness. And then I started this really, internal journey to really figure out who the hell am I? And when I did, it, like you said, completely unapologetically and not rude, not like, hi, I'm here and I'm authentic, so screw you. It was more like, because there are people out there. We did, my friend Hannah Abad and I did this a podcast live, and it's recorded on LinkedIn. You can check it out. But it was like, are you being authentic or is it a trauma response? And so if you're being authentic, but you're being an asshole, chances are it's a trauma response. Because if you're walking into a room and you're like, hey, I'm here and I really don't give a crap what you think about what I'm going to say, that's probably not.
You probably do give a crap. Yeah. Exactly. If you're leading with that, you probably do give a crap.
Right. But if I walk into a room and it's just like, here I am, there's no bravado. It's just, I am who I am. I happen to attract people, and I'm okay with that. Like at first, when it was happening, I was like, why are these people staring at me? Like, why are people coming up to me that don't know me? It was freaking me out. And then I realized, I'm a little bit of a magnet. People want to come. Okay, cool. You know what? Come, let's talk, and anyway, I don't ADHD. I don't know why I got on that tangent, but
it's like a bat signal, right? When you're yourself.
Yes.
For other people who are right.
And they're attracted to you and they want to work with you. And that's why I'm saying the authenticity part is important, because you were like, authenticity. And I read it on LinkedIn today. They were like, it's more like adaptability. But I think that you still have to be true to who you are and your values, right? And your morals.
Yeah, I think I mean, adaptability is fine, but it's within a range, right? So like,
Yeah.
I can be adaptable within the range of who I am, but I'm not going to completely morph myself into someone who I'm not in order
No.
to check some box, right? Like that doesn't feel good to me, and it's not going to attract the people who want to work with me either.
Mm-mm.
So there is like I think when people are in integrity with themselves, there's almost like a calm or stillness that's internal to them. That is like, there's no proving, there's no performing, it's almost like a home, a feeling of home, right?
Yes.
When you're at home with yourself,
Mm-hmm.
that is the best. And
You're
you can be like
comfortable. You're comfortable in your own skin. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Where it has shown, where my like authenticity edge has come is, or the feedback I've gotten is, was really interesting because a coach I work with said to me like, "Oh, I talked to someone who said I coach the smartest people in the room, and that's what you do." She was saying to me, "That's what I do," and I'm like, "Yeah, but I would never say that. That's not signaling to me what is actually the priority about who I work with." So it's really interesting because there is this like intersection of humility and authenticity and not hiding and being out there about who you are and what you do in a way that still feels in integrity. So I don't know, it's just, there's an interesting kind of interplay of many of these kind of aspects of ourselves and phenomena. And it's interesting kind of the reflection back that people see based on that and the assumptions they make, which is actually sometimes a projection of their own stuff anyway. So I think as you get farther in the entrepreneurial journey, you start to be able to discern a little bit better, like what's feedback that's for you and what's feedback that has nothing to do with you or that you are not interested in, right? So I think a lot of people early in their entrepreneurial journey are looking for advice and input and all of these other things. And as you get farther in the journey, you start to have a better barometer, I think, for like what's helpful and what's not helpful and kind of where you are in all of that.
Right. Oh, 100%. And you know, what's true for me now was not true for me 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Like
well,
even
we changed too, right?
Right. And we evolve. And I think that, you know, when we evolve, our businesses evolve. And so like I used to work with startups and, you know, if somebody was broke, I'd be like, okay, you know, we'll work it out. Now I don't do that because I'm at a different level. And, you know, I don't want to put that message out there. You know, the people that I work with are 500,000 plus and, they can pay their bills, you know, and I'll, you know, I will still help people here and there, but the majority of it is, you know, I'm not a charity case. And I was doing that for a while and people were sending me, you know, referrals and every single person they, you know, like I would say how much we charge for a website. And they were like, oh my God. And I'm like, it's not a lot of money, you know? And I was like, why did they send me this person? Because I evolved, but I never told anyone that I evolved. My business changed, right? And I never told anybody because I just assumed, well, they knew me. They were following me. They knew. Nobody knew, you know, until I said something. And when you feel that evolution happening, right? It's like, for me, it was like such a big shift. And another shift came. I was on vacation in New York last week, although by the time this airs, it's probably, I don't know how many, you know, like a while ago. But I was on vacation in New York and something just completely shifted in me where it was like another, you know, like a leveling up. And I was like, okay, well, time to say I've evolved, you know, even more because, you know, it was a, it was, I think in the beginning as entrepreneurs, we come from a place of lack, what we don't have. We don't have this. We don't have money to pay for this system that we really need in order to get going. We don't have this. So we'll work with anybody just to get the money that we need to do the thing. Right. And when you come from a place of lack, you stay in a place of lack. But when you get out of that lack mindset and you get into the, you know, oh my goodness, of course. I mean, I had, a prospective client be like, I said, I'll send you a proposal. We're not the cheapest. And he's like, oh no, I know that you're the Cadillac. And I was like, okay, cool.
Yes, I am. Thank you very much.
And I was like, not just cruise control. We'll drive the shit for you. Let go of the wheel. And, we got you. So it was, but, hearing that was, and it wasn't like an ego thing. It was just this really good feeling that all of the hard work that I and, now my team have done over the years has paid off, because now we're viewed, a certain way. And that just made me feel really like, okay. And then that got me up another level. I was like, okay, here we are. Now we're the Cadillac. I mean, I'm not going to put, but it was just, it was one of those things that was like everything, it's all an evolution. We start here, and especially as women, we start here and we want to get here. And because of society, it's like, we're almost afraid to go there. But then, we get there and it's like, okay, now I want to go here. And it's like, I could probably go about here. And I'm like, I'm going here. Oh, and guess what? Now I'm here. Now I'm here. And for women that are listening, do not shrink. Don't shrink. If you want to hit that next level, go for that next level. Don't even think twice about it. And I think that's a really big thing, because we are in a patriarchal society. One day, hopefully, we'll be back to matriarchal, because, guys are just screwing all the shit up. That's another story. And I really believe that when women empower themselves and women empower women, woo, there's a lot.
Yeah, we get a lot of messages about how it's safe to stay small. We take up too much space, blah, blah, blah. And I think one of the pieces I really had to work on early in my entrepreneurial journey was my relationship with money, and this question of scarcity versus abundance mindset. And I think when you start to really get the concept that money is energy, it affects how money comes to you and how you spend money, right? So I'm very intentional with what I invest in as a business, that the people, my team, and the things that I invest in are energetically aligned with what I want more of in the world, right? So I'm not going to invest in a marketing person who's like fast and loose and like sending DMs to everybody and just crowding their inbox. Like, that is not what I want, even if it's cheaper, right? That's not the energy that I want to generate through the business through the funds that my business is generating. And so when I think about it as a cycle of what's coming in and the energy with which it's coming in, right? I never pressure clients to work with me. I'm not interested in that. I want funds to come in that people feel excited about the potential, excited about our collaboration. And then the money that I invest through that, I think of as I'm a steward of it, right? And how am I using that to create more of what I want to see in the world? And so I think that's a piece that sometimes entrepreneurs skip and try to shortcut and paper over. And then they act in ways that really ultimately sort of catch up with them, instead of coming from a place of, here's what I want to generate through my business, and really interrogating that a bit about what they want that to look like. That it's not just like the fast buck in service of whatever, more fast bucks. Like, it just, when I think about sort of some of the scourge of capitalism, it comes from that place of like more.
It's 100%.
Right?
Yes.
For what?
Yes. Well, and it's like, I think that's what got us where we are right now. It's greed. It's unbridled greed, period. And I, when I look at my business and I look at other businesses, for me, I am very picky at who I work with. I do not just work with just anybody. If we don't align, if our values don't align, I'm not working with them. And I have some people, that are like, well, how can you do that? And it's like, because I can. It's my business, and if I can't be in a place of joy, I don't want to do it. Life's too short, and for me, now I'm on the other end, so it's definitely a lot shorter than it used to be. So, it's like, I don't want to waste it helping the wrong people. And when I say that,
Mhm.
it's like, I want to help the people that in my mind, I want to see them succeed. I have a client
Yep.
who's a Republican, and we do not see eye to eye on a lot of things. He's one of my favorite people,
Mhm.
because we can have a conversation like we were like in the car with each other for 5 hours. And we were laughing. It was like, we didn't kill each other. It's like, because we completely respect each other, right?
Yeah.
And like I'll tell, they're like, you're working with who? And I'm like, he's an amazing guy, and I want to see him succeed.
Mhm.
He's got a great little family, right? He's got he's just a good guy. And so for me, I don't care about political party. I care about extremes. I won't work with MAGA, and I will go, just going to say it. I'm not going to do it, because they do not align with my values. There's, anything that is purporting or promoting hate. I can't be part of that. So, but he's not. We have more like than not. And I go back to what I said in the beginning. If people would just, I'm going to say it, fucking have a conversation, we actually will find that we probably have more in common than not. And if people will stop scaring people about things that are different, and instead, show how differences are good and nothing to be afraid of, we would live in a completely different world. But, that's not what they want. They want to, rule by fear. And the people that are scared are scared.
Mhm.
And that's what
Yeah,
it
I
is.
think getting down to like the essence of what people are actually afraid of, like there's what people think they're afraid of, and then there's what they're actually afraid of at
Yes.
their essence. And I
Yes.
think that's actually, and most of those fears are just human fears, right? Like, I worry for my family's health. I worry for my financial security. I worry that my community is going to be safe and okay.
Mm-hmm.
And there are ways in which people go about it that are like not good. But at the essence, like when we can kind of get back to the human essence of a lot of that, I think there's a tremendous amount of common ground.
Yeah.
I think there's just so many layers on top of it, and posturing and people listening to different messages and getting pulled from like actually at their essence what they want.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think as entrepreneurs, it's really, if you're hiring somebody, you want them to want you to win, right?
Yes.
If you're at any point hiring somebody and you get the sense that they don't want you to win, they are not the person to hire, right?
No.
Like, I wouldn't want to work with a client who doesn't think that I want them to win, right? I want to work with people who can see in me what I see for them, right? And so as a coach, I mean, it's different for different service providers, right? But as a coach, like, I'm about what people's goals are and what they want for themselves. And I'm going to stand for that. And I'm going to continue to show up for that, even when they don't believe that themselves. Like, that's part of my job.
Right.
And so the question around like who you partner with as an entrepreneur is crucial, right? Because you want people to surround you who are holding that for you and with you, even when you can't for yourself.
Yeah. And it's like, I always come from a place, of love. And if I can't genuinely, like you said, root for you to win, I can't work with you, because it's not fair to you. Number one, because you're not getting my best, and it's not fair to me because I don't want to do it. So I just don't do it. And it bothers me in a way that I don't want to see certain people succeed. You know what I mean? Because it's like, I want to see everybody succeed, but it's like, ooh, not you, because you're going to take your money and you're going to do bad things with it. And it sucks that's even in my brain, but it is. So when I meet with somebody, I do an initial discovery call, and it's to discover, they think it's, or, some people go into it thinking it's like discovering what they need. And it's like, no, it's discovering, can we work together? Then we'll talk about what you need. But if we, aren't aligned, we can't work together. Then it doesn't matter what you need.
Yeah.
And
I think, oh, sorry.
No, it's just that it's like, I have told people that it's like, yeah, we can't work together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the question as an entrepreneur is, one of the questions is what you're saying yes to and no to and why, like really bringing some intention around that. And I think the scarcity mode that people can sometimes start in when they're on the entrepreneurship journey can set up conditions in which you say yes to things that you really want to say no to. And so tuning in internally to like, what does my yes feel like and what does my no feel like is an important part, I think, of really growing the muscle around that discernment.
Yeah, but in the beginning, some people don't have a choice, right? Like for me, I didn't choose to be an entrepreneur. It was like I got fired from my job, and it was like collect unemployment or figure something out, right? So I figured something out, and I worked with everybody, and I mean everybody. There was this one guy who was so sleazy. I was like, "Why in God's name am I doing this?" And it was like because he's going to pay me this much per month, and I felt it was it really felt icky. And when I could finally let him go. It was one of the best feelings in the world. It was just like, a phone call. We'll call him John. That's not his name, but it was like, hey, John, I'm giving you 30 days because I don't want to leave you high and dry, but you got to find somebody else because this is not working. Oh, but darling, I love you. And it's like, and that is why this is not working. So you have 30 days, because it was like, very icky. And
so, but what I noticed about you sharing this is you knew, right? Like it wasn't like you were deluding yourself into being like, actually, like I could really support this guy and this is going to be great. It's like, this is a means to an end in the moment, right? And will never work with somebody who has those characteristics again, right? And so that was the learning.
Oh man, he showed up, I'm a musician. I was in a different band at the time, but he showed up at like one of my shows and I was like, well, shit, and he's like, hey, darling. And, I looked at my, she was my wife at the time because it wasn't legal, but, my now wife. And I was just like, really? And he came over and gave me a big hug. And I was like, no, you can, I kind of like, squeezed under the hug and he laughed because he thought it was the funniest thing. He's like, oh, you're so funny. And I was like, no, dude, don't touch me anymore. Like, don't touch me, it was icky. But then there were other people that I went above and beyond and they didn't appreciate it. And so I had to send a long email to this one client. I should send it to you because it was just like, I have done this, and this for you for free. And I go to her place to drop off business cards and, she was like, thanks. And I went, no, that's like $200. And she's like, oh, you said that they came with it. And I said, no, I said I would do the design for you. I have to pay for those. You have to pay for those, So then an email went out that was just like, basically we're breaking up, but you're right. It's like, you do know. And when you get to the point that you can get out of those icky situations, I think it's like, okay.
Yeah. Well, it's also, I don't know if you see this in your work, but I see a lot of people at the beginning feel like they have to over deliver, over serve to the point where they're actually not honoring their own needs and boundaries because they think they have to do that in order to get the work or the client or whatever it is. Yeah. And then it comes from this scarcity energy that then people take advantage of, right? And that's part of what you're describing there. Instead of like, nope, like here's how I work. Here's what my expectations are. And so this is how it's going to be together, right? Like treating people what your expectations are around what the collaboration is and is not. And I think it's hard, especially for people socialized as women, to say like, I don't have to earn my value by over delivering or over serving or over credentialing or over everything pretty much.
I mean, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, like really interrogating what is the consequence of that over delivering.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of that. I think, I did it in the beginning. It was like, oh, how can I help? How can I help? And then it was like, I just made $5 an hour. Oh, wait, I just lost $2,000. It's like at the end of the day. So when I started doing like pro bono work, I would send an invoice with what it actually cost and then zero it out so that they can see the value that they were getting, because that was important. But we're almost at an hour. Okay. Which I knew was going to happen. Talk about your book real fast. Title,
Yes.
where they can get it, talk about it. We're going to go over, folks. Thank you for staying. Go ahead.
So it's called The Rooted Renegade, Transform Within, Disrupt the Status Quo, and Unleash Your Legacy. And it is broken down into kind of what I think are some of the hallmarks of success, what we're actually craving when we're scrolling Amazon or looking at Netflix and all of that. It is a whole bunch of tools around how you settle your nervous system, fire up your passion, and then create a relationship with yourself and other people that feels really fulfilling instead of soul sucking. And so it's broken down into those 3 parts, and it walks you through journaling exercises, visualizations, reflection questions, all of that, which are the very same tools I use with my clients. It's a way for me to really this book is a way for me to give back, to give people some of the tools I wish we really all had. So you can find the book at Amazon. You can find it at therootedrenegade.com. You can learn more about me there too. There's a lot of resources on my website that you can access. And I'm very proud that it's gotten a lot of awards in personal development and mind, body, spirit. And so I have so enjoyed hearing the impact it's had on readers in terms of giving them a place to go to when they really want to get deeper into understanding themselves and having a bigger impact with their lives.
Wow. Thank you for hanging out an hour plus. Really appreciate you taking time out of your day. And the last question that I ask all of my guests is, what lights your fire?
Oh, you're asking me?
Yes.
I could talk about this for an hour, Iris. Look at terrible setup.
Okay. Give us the 60-second version,
yes.
or 60 to 90-second version.
What lights my fire? I get to talk every day with clients who are having monumental impacts in academic spaces, from physics to chemistry to art history to physicians to attorneys to superintendents making consequential decisions for their school districts and students and staff. I am so humbled to do this work and so fired up. I mean, my belly just gets when I get to work with someone and see the impact of our work together on their institutions, their families, themselves. So that is what it gets me fired up daily. And I feel very fortunate about that.
That is awesome. And I know you could say more. Thank you so much. I'm going to say goodbye and I'll be right back. Everybody, thank you. Thank you so much for hanging out an hour plus. I hope that you found Rebecca, as I'm just going to say, amazing as I think she is. Go to her website. Go buy the book. Book will help you out so much. And don't forget to click like, share, subscribe. Give us a review. Let us know what you thought about this episode. What nuggets have you gleaned from it? Let us know in the comments. All right. For now, I'm going to sign off. Iris Goldfeder, and I appreciate you all. And until next time, go out and find what lights your fire. See ya.